Chinese justice moves quickly. This was the first of 3 student leaders ordered to die for their bid for freedom. The trial was publicly shown on Chinese television. His crime, setting fire to a train in Shanghai after it ran into protesters blocking the railway line, killing 6 of them. While an appeal process does exist, it's generally accepted here that they'll probably die this Sunday, and it's very likely the execution will be broadcast to the nation. It'll be done with a single bullet in the back of the head. The bullet will then be retrieved and sent to the next of kin. The body then taken to a public hospital for dissection, the human organs used for transplants. Such is the price of freedom in today's China. Luckier perhaps is this group of workers who were paraded before being shipped off to work camps. Is it any wonder that the Australian Embassy treads cautiously when any suggestion is made that it's harboring fugitives from Chinese justice? Even more so when that fugitive could be the leading student dissident, Chai Ling.
Whether or not the dissident being held here is Chai Ling is still Beijing's #1 piece of speculation. But whoever it is, it's outraged the Chinese government.
If it turns out that Chai Ling is already in Australia, it could cause a huge rift in relations between the 2 countries. Tim Skinner in Beijing for 7 Nightly News. Tim Skinner in Beijing for News World.
Well, the Chinese government, again firmly in control using the might of its army, is now desperately trying to woo back tourists and their money. That money badly needed to support the country's unstable economy. In an effort to do that, this morning they reopened Tiananmen Square to the public and gave assurances to would-be tourists about their safety. Joining us live from Beijing, 11 AM's reporter Tim Skinner. Though, Tim, I'm told that welcome back to the square has not been exactly that.
No, it wasn't, Don. Good morning. We had the word this morning that the Army was arranging an official tour of Tiananmen Square, first of all for the accredited media and then later for the public. But of the 200 or so of us here at the moment, only a handful are accredited. We, as you know, have come in as tourists. And having been told by the Army yesterday that I was also a tourist and had to behave like one, I took my camera, went down to the square. First, you should know that the front page of the government paper here, the China Daily, says that the tourism crisis here is so bad that the government will now guarantee the safety of all tourists. So with that in mind, I tried to walk past, not into the square. Twice I was turned back by the Army, so I hired a tricycle and was taken right around the square. And 3 times I was stopped, each time by a soldier with a submachine gun who ordered me to put the camera down. The troops are still at 5-meter intervals right around the square. They're all carrying those AK-47s. It's certainly not a very friendly reopening.
So it's hardly encouraging to tourists who would want to go back there at this stage?
Absolutely not. I think the most distressing part about this morning was the whitewash job the Army is doing in the square, particularly around the steps of the Heroes Monument. That's where many students were shot, and according to some who escaped, the students were set on fire. And the steps were charred and the trees around the steps were burnt black before, but this morning the steps are all repainted white and they're still replanting fresh green bushes around the monument. Just like the television propaganda, it's as though the Army seems to think, or the Army is making the Chinese people think, that there never was a massacre at Tiananmen.
Tim, just briefly moving on, the tensions between China and Australia and the Americans as well regarding our government supporting dissidents. Have we had any word yet as to whether the Australian Embassy is still holding people there or they have been moved already to Australia?
Hard to say, Don. We were up there last night and then just before sunrise this morning trying to get some indication of what's going on. The Australian Embassy, quite rightly so, I guess, in situations like this, which are so internationally delicate, is not saying anything, denying that Chai Ling is there, or they are not denying that Chai Ling is there, but they're just not saying anything. They won't confirm it, they won't deny it. There's certainly a very large presence of troops around the embassy compound. That's most unusual. There are reports going around the media here today that Chai Ling is either definitely at the embassy being given safe harbour there or has been already moved to Australia. I think the latter is most unlikely. I don't know how Chai Ling, somebody like her, would be able to make it to Australia under these very, very tough conditions. I think she's still there, but then we've all been wrong.
Yes, indeed. Tim Skinner in Beijing, and that's the problem, that so many people there are working on that assumption that they are rumours and no one clearly knows what is going on. But obviously tensions very strong between Australia and Chinese governments at this stage.
The government has put back the timetable for executing student leaders and dissidents accused of having key roles in the counter-revolutionary riots. The first 3 were to be shot in Shanghai yesterday, but they're now due to die on Thursday. In Beijing, 8 more people, all described as young ruffians, are also waiting to die, and their sentence, death by a single bullet, the cost of which will be met by their next of kin. Meanwhile, China has turned its venom on foreign reporters still in Beijing, accusing Western media of troublemaking and sparking the riots at Tiananmen. Now, with the cleaned and re-greened Tiananmen Square about to be reopened to its people, it's as though China really believes its own monumental lie, that there was no massacre of students, only a successful military operation to protect the order of the capital. Tim Skinner in Beijing for 7 Nightly News. A spokesman at the Foreign Affairs Ministry in Shanghai said 3 men convicted of setting fire to a train there were shot dead earlier today. They were to have been executed last Sunday, but the sentences were delayed while appeals were heard. The men were accused of burning the train after it ploughed into a group of protesters on the tracks, killing at least 6 of them. The government's also said to be stepping up its attempts to capture leading dissident Chai Ling, said to be hiding somewhere, possibly at the Australian Embassy in Beijing. Premier Li Peng has ordered that no effort be spared to find the young woman, now regarded as a traitor. Meanwhile, as Triona Holden reports, the spirit of the student revolt lives on.
The news of the execution made a few lines on Chinese television. For the moment, the authorities have held back broadcasting the event, although 3,000 people are understood to have witnessed it. The 3 young Shanghai workers paid the ultimate penalty after being found guilty in a big show trial of setting fire to a train which ploughed into and killed 6 freedom protesters. If Chinese custom was followed, they were each executed with a single bullet to the head. Their next of kin will pay a few cents for that bullet. Although there has been no announcement, it's also strongly rumored that 17 people sentenced to die in the northeastern city of Jinan may have already been put to death. 8 young people still await the executioner's bullet in the capital, Beijing. While back in Australia, the Chinese community feels the executions are just the tip of the iceberg, the feeling in China is that the government is now in a position to do what it likes to bring the freedom movement to heel. Tim Skinner for 7 Nightly News. These were the last few minutes of some of China's pro-democracy demonstrators before they were marched off and shot. Accused of various counter-revolutionary crimes, they were paraded before thousands of spectators at a big sports center where they were harangued and humiliated. Shown too in these Chinese television pictures were 3 men sentenced to die last week for setting fire to a train in Shanghai. The train had ploughed into and killed 6 fellow demonstrators. With their arms trussed behind their backs, they were later forced to kneel. Then a bullet was fired into their skulls. Chinese television also carried pictures, some of them taken with a hidden camera, of what the authorities claim were Taiwanese secret agents. It claimed these agents moved among the pro-democracy demonstrators, inciting them along counter-revolutionary lines. Meanwhile, the Chinese government continues to rewrite the events in Tiananmen Square by circulating a videotaped version of those events as they saw them. Here's Jeremy Thompson in Canberra. Meanwhile, the Chinese government continues to rewrite the events in Tiananmen Square by circulating its own videotaped version of those events as they saw them.